My friends, today we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff I wish I knew before I started mountain biking. There's all these little details and tricks and tips and things to remember, and finally, after 9 years of mountain biking, I think I've got them down, but maybe not. So as I pull myself out of here, the first weird tip that I want to give you guys, have you ever seen this thing? It is a valve core remover for your tires, for your Presta valves. Presta is the besta. That's how you remember the difference between Presta and Schrader. Schrader is for your Chevy, for your wheelbarrow. Presta is the besta. It's for your nice, new, fancy mountain bike tires, wheels, rims, valves, whatever it is. So let's take the air out of the tire here. You know, you just get the valve off. You open it up. That's nothing new. We all know that. A little lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. That's another one you can always remember. I haven't thought of a good hack to actually keep that from happening. If you guys know, let me know in the comments. Okay, we got the air out of the tire, nice and easy. So if you're looking at a tire, how do you know which way the rotation is supposed to go? The drivetrain, oh no, I haven't thought this through. I shouldn't have taken the wheel off. Let me put the wheel back on. Here's a quick tip on how to put your wheel back on your... Okay, so the first concept that I was about to try to explain up there, but totally didn't work, is that when you see most references to bikes, the drivetrain is looking towards you, right? Most photos of bikes, most way you set up your bike, you know, the cogs, the derailleur, this big thing right here, whatever they call it, it's usually pointed towards you. So the drivetrain is pointed towards you, which means the direction of travel of the bike is this way. So that's the reference I use to start thinking about my bike tires. So when you take a photo of your bike, all the writing on the bike tires is usually showing towards you. So there's two sides, and let's go back to what I was going to talk about before. Take the wheel off. This side of the tire has almost nothing on it. It's got Maxxis and that's it. This side of the tire has all the writing and all the gobbledygook and all the mumbo jumbo. That means this side of the tire is facing you when you take a photo, which means it's going this way. The rotation is this way. And obviously right now we have the disc on, so it's easier to realize, oh yeah, the disc is always on the other side of the drivetrain, yada, yada, yada. But when the tire's totally off the wheel, off the bead, and you're just, oh, I've got plenty of sealant. Oh man. Here's a tip within a tip. Get these Pedro tire levers. They're pretty nice, big. They're hard to break. Oh yeah, the thought was, I'm gonna take the tire off the wheel because then you can't cheat, you can't see. So to take a tire off a wheel, here's some other good little tips here. There's always a center channel in your rim, inside the wheel here. And your tire gets looser and looser the more you can get into the center channel of your wheel. Yeah, use the center channel just like I did, and that made it a lot easier than normal, I'd say. A lot of sealant in here, that's good. That means my wheels are nice and airtight. Things are happening. Oh. So, all of this just to say, when you're putting on a new tire and you're just not sure what direction you're supposed to do it, and like, it has it written on here somewhere, you just always know that the writing on the tire faces you is on the same side as the drivetrain. That was a long lesson, but hopefully you learned something there. Okay, so now I'm just gonna put this thing on really easily. It's gonna be no problem at all because I'm using the center channel. Obviously I have all my sealant in here right now and it's not the best way to do it, but we are going to do it. We're doing it live. There's no cutting, there's no editing on this. This is all one continuous shot. Like David Copperfield. Center channel, work the center channel. Make sure your tire is in the center channel. That's how it'll go on with just your hands. No problem at all. See, easy. Easy. See, you don't even need tire levers. Tire levers are for wusses. Okay, so one of the tips that bike shop guys like to do is make sure your valve stem is between the two X's on the Maxxis or whatever goofy tire brand you like to run. Inspecting your sealant every once in a while, it's worth doing. I took off the whole tire here, but you saw how easy it was to just pop open the bead on the tire real quick and check. It seems like kind of a waste of time. It seems like a pain in the butt, but when you need that sealant and you're on the trail, you'd rather have it and know it's there versus walking your bike back home. Wow, okay, that actually went on pretty good, so I'm surprised. Let's pump the tire back up. Let's get it going. There's a couple ways to do this. So you can pump your tire back up and try to seat it on the bead without the valve stem in, because that has more airflow. If you have kind of a crappy pump, which you shouldn't, you should spend the money to get a decent pump. And I've got this Toe Peak one over here. Air charger thing where I can build up pressure inside the pump and then release the pressure and snap it in. But yeah, for this demonstration, I'm gonna put the valve core back in with my little valve core tool. And you know what? This tool is so small, it's worth it just to throw it in your bag. Throw it in with your other tools. Bring one with you. I literally did not know what this was until like a couple months ago. I've seen them, they've come with all my bikes. I've seen them a million times, and someone finally said, oh yeah, it's like a valve core tool. What kind of valve is this again? It's a Presta, because it's the besta. So come over here, you can see there's a pretty big air gap. Now we don't want to be in the center channel. Now you want to kind of like roll this out a little bit and see if you can get out of that center channel, because now we don't want big air gaps. Big air gaps is what helped us get the tire on, but it's not going to help us get this sealed. We're going to be here a while. Forget this. I spent the money to buy the tools that are right for the job. I don't need to pretend like this is the way to do it. If you've got a crappy pump, bring it to the bike shop. You're going to have a tough day. So I'm going to charge this up. So right now I'm pumping air into this thing and not pumping air into the tire. Oh yeah. Here we go. Now I'm going to switch this to inflate, and it will inflate perfectly. First try, no problem. Ba-bam. So usually I try to go up to 40 PSI. Woo-hoo. That's how you know it's working. So the one thing you're looking for when you seat your tire is that really big popping sound. That's really good. But there's also a little line here that you can see just all the way around, and you just want to make sure that line is out and it is exposed. That means your bead, I'm out of breath right now. That means your bead is properly seated. One thing you can also do is do a little shake. You know, take it up to 40 PSI, do the shake. I also kind of like bounce it around a little bit because, you know, the impact of hitting it on the ground can sometimes bounce the bead out into the right spot. So yeah, set it up to 40 PSI and just kind of have it there for a little while. So according to my bike pump, the pressure inside the tires right now is 40 PSI. But you can't always trust your pump. That's a pretty nice pump and I trust it pretty good. But I also have one of these tire pressure tools to really make sure, and I highly suggest you get one if you travel around, if you go to your buddy's house. If your pump is kind of a piece of crap, this helps to really kind of know. At least this is consistent. If you're using a bunch of different pumps, you'll know that at least 25 PSI on this is 25 PSI on the trail, and it feels pretty good. And of course, I also have the Quark Tire Whiz valves where I can go inside an app and see how much pressure is in my tires. And it's blinking red right now because the tire pressure is not in my set range. I have inside the app, I'm like, okay, as long as it's between 24 and 26 PSI, blink green. If it's not that, blink red. So that's a whole different thing. This is a little bit cheaper than this whole setup. So let's see what the PSI according to this gauge is inside the tire. Like I said, I tried to get it to 40 PSI. 36 PSI according to the gauge. So between my pump and this gauge, we've got a 4 PSI discrepancy. You've got to keep one thing as your eternal true source of truth, your single source of truth. I learned that from someone, this phrase called single source of truth. So if you keep one thing consistent between everything, make it a tire gauge. Now I'm just going to keep letting air out of this until it turns green, and that's how I know that I have the right PSI in my tires. It's green, good to go. Oh yeah, totally forgot about this. If you have an air compressor, there's this $30 thing on Amazon that's a digital tire gauge that works with a compressor, will work on your Presta valve. I use this a lot. It actually shows what's going on. I've already broken a couple, so they're kind of a piece of crap, but it makes it really easy. Like when we were seating the tire a second ago, just having the air compressor, bam, pop it in, you're good. Here is another easy one to remember for your pedals. When you take them off, you back them off. The pedal wrench goes towards the back of the bike. When you're putting them on, it goes towards the front, but you back off. The other way to kind of remember this, which muddies the water, and I don't even want to try to mention it, but this is how I kind of started. You look at the drivetrain, the pedal threads are always righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Even like both of them are righty-tighty when, see, that's why I didn't want to do this. With pedals, when you're looking at the drivetrain, this one's righty-tighty and that one's righty-tighty. When you're looking at the drivetrain, this one's lefty-loosey and that one's lefty-loosey. So it's a total mind screw. That's why back off. Pull your wrench towards the back, it's gonna come off.
As I edit this video, I realize that this tip only works if your wrench is pointed up in the air. If it's pointed down and you try to go back, that means it's tightening. But if your wrench is pointing up in the air and you try to go back, that works. So that's why it's not so simple.
As I will demonstrate right here how easy it is. And see? One thing you really want to do with your pedals is keep the threads greased. This is a metal on metal juncture. Metal on metal has a tendency to like get water in there and gets like bonded and it seizes up. So keeping grease on your pedals is a really, really good way to do that. I just bought a new little tub of grease, not a tub, I bought a new tube of grease recently because I used to have this big tub. I showed it in a previous video. Now this is just a nice little thing of grease. You put it on there, boom, you're done. It's easy. Another thing with pedals, your pedals are directional. This riding needs to be in the correct direction. If you're like standing above your bike and you're looking down, the riding is legible. It's in the correct direction. Righty-tighty. No, just go forward. Don't think about righty-tighty. I don't put my pedals on very tight. I don't like just cranking them on there because they kind of generally get tighter as you ride. Of course, you don't want your pedals falling off, so you need to play your own personal safety game, but I don't like wrenching on my pedals. I like getting them snug, but it's okay. They'll come off. I've never had a pedal come off while I'm riding. When I lube my chain, I've been a little bit more maniacal lately, so I just do like a normal clean paper towel, go through a couple back spins just to make sure you get that initial stuff off. But lately I've been doing link by link, and it's kind of cool, but it's very tedious. So I have this thing that my buddy Bill got me. I don't know what it's called. It was at the Trek bike shop. It's some kind of applicator for the lube. What I do, and you can do this even if you're not going to do it maniacally like me, I look for the master link. The master link on your chain has a very distinct look to it. It's kind of a funky different thing. So I start at the master link with my little tool here, and I just do one chain link at a time, one drop, and I just go over and over and over. And now I know where I started and I know where I will end. Previously, I just kind of sprayed lube on my chain and I was like, that's good enough. So now you know when you get everything. I also always lube the internal side, like this side, because this side is what touches all the components. I used to lube up top, the outside, and it's like, the outside's not touching anything. The first time you do this, you realize that it takes a long time to go all the way around the chain, and that there's no way I was doing a good job previously, because you just like, wait, it should be done, right? It should be done. Nope. There is a lot of links. One required tool that you should have is one of these little torque wrench tools. You can set the different Newton meters on here. You can switch it out with different types of heads, different screws. You just want to make sure that especially your cockpit, is torqued down to the right specs. When I'm riding, these bolts come loose a decent amount of time, and I always want to make sure that they are torqued down to the correct spec. And they actually are for once. There we go. Now personally, for my brake levers and my shifters, I get these tight-ish. Of course, you don't want them falling off, you don't want them flopping around, but you really don't want them super torqued down, because when you get in a crash, you want your levers to be able to move out of the way. And right now, these are a little too tight, I would say, because you would normally want, okay, there we go, them to move. If you're in a crash, they can move out of the way. It's not a huge thing where it snaps off or something breaks. You can give way. One thing I talked about in a recent video that you may have missed is marking your touch points on your bike with some thin little tape. I found this black tape on Amazon. So your touch points are, your saddle, your handlebars, stuff that if you took your bike completely apart and then you put it back together, you'd probably struggle to be like, oh, how far up were my handlebars rolled, and like, where was everything? How high was my seat? Which way is straight on my seat? So a little piece of black tape can help ridiculously with this. You can also use like a Sharpie marker. Some people even use like a screwdriver or like some kind of pick to just scrape and put it in, just gouge the metal to be like, oh, this is where it is. So I know it might be very tiny on the video right here, but this is a little piece of tape just to show me how deep my seat insertion is, and obviously it's in all the way, but also just where straight is on my saddle. So these are pretty hard to pick up on camera because it's black on black on black, but I've got one for my handlebars, which makes more sense than the seat one, obviously. But yeah, I can make sure that my handlebar roll, the distance, the center is just in a nice position. Use your imagination. If you want to make sure that your brake lever's in the right spot, if you want to make sure they're in the right roll, you can do all of that with a little piece of tape. So a couple other random ones that I wish I knew before I started riding my bike, working on my bike. When you wash your bike, turn it upside down. Especially if you really hit it with the hose, they always say, don't really hit it with the hose, don't really get it that wet, wipe it down with a rag. But of course, we're gonna hose down our bikes. Turn your bike upside down. You will not believe the kind of water that gets trapped in all kinds of little spots. There are drainage holes in your bike, but sometimes they're just not good enough to really get all the water out. Another thing that is one of the hardest things for me personally is not ignoring when something feels weird on your bike. Even if you bring it to the bike shop and they can't quite figure it out, something's wrong. If you know something's wrong with your bike, just keep playing around, try to isolate the problem. I had something with my front hub on the Ibis V1 on the last ride. I'm like, man, something's weird, something's feeling weird, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I kept experimenting, I kept looking around, and like the front hub had kind of disintegrated inside the bike. So listen to your body. Obviously, when you first get a bike, you're gonna be still figuring it out and you won't know, but a few months in, you should be able to feel like, something's not right. Do not ignore it. Do not ignore the feeling. Try to just get into your bike, wrench around, loosen bolts, tighten bolts, poke around a little bit, find a very good mechanic that you trust with your bike, which is not easy to find, and do your best to kind of diagnose and what's going on. And another thing, while I'm out here ranting and raving, get a decent bike rack. Just spend the money. Me and my brother used to take our front wheels off. We used to take our back wheels off. We used to take all the wheels off just to fit it in the back of my Saturn Vue SUV and put our bikes in with like moving blankets and all this stuff. Because yes, the bike racks are expensive, but the One Up USA rack that I have, it's worth it. It is expensive, but man, just boop, you pop your bike on, boom, you can lock it up nice and easy. You take it in, you take it off. You're not jacking around with your bike, which if you're taking your wheels off, you're always leaving more room to break something, to mess something up, to squeeze your brakes, to knock a derailleur off if you don't have the rear wheel on it. All those problems are solved by just buying a good, decent bike rack, for the love of God. So I hope that brain dump was useful for rookies and veterans alike. I'm sure if you've been riding for a while, there's maybe one or two things in there hopefully you learned. If you know a beginner mountain biker, send them the video. Let them know there's a few little tips and tricks that will make their life easier. Use the center channel when you're mounting your tire. If you've made it this far in the video, that means you dig what I'm doing, and if you would like to support the channel, there's plenty of ways to do it. You can buy a nice BKXC cap, you can buy a BKXC sweatshirt, and you can also buy some BKXC gloves on shop.bkxc.bike. It's a small thing to support the channel, to keep the videos coming. I'm losing my mind here in this quarantine. I am bankrupt of ideas, so if you guys have any ideas, please let me know. I'm dying out here. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you on the trail.